Today I would like to talk about how to go about establishing your ethos. Okay, we've talked about ethos a little bit, logos and pathos. Logos, these are the arguments you use, logical arguments you use to persuade the audience about your point. We'll talk a little more about that when we talk about persuasion. Pathos is similar. Pathos is more emotional appeals that you use to pull at the heartstrings of your audience and persuade them to go with what you're saying. And we'll also talk about that when we get to persuasion. Ethos, let me spend a little time talking about this because ethos is a way of persuading your audience that you know what you're talking about, that you're a credible speaker worth listening to. Have you ever listened to a speech or somebody talking and thought, oh man, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. He doesn't know what's going on. It's probably because the person hasn't done a very good job of establishing their ethos. I had a male student, sorry guys out there, but I had a male student give a speech one time on why women should use birth control. And I have to say, you know, it was hard to believe what he had to say on that topic because this is something he had no experience with, which also leads me to my next point. Choose a topic you have experience with. Talk about something you know. Brain surgery. I know nothing about brain surgery. I could do a lot of research on it and really try, but because my experience with that is limited, I'm not going to be able to do much in the way of establishing my credibility of somebody who really understands brain surgery. But anyway, we'll talk about this a little more. Let me get on into ethos. Ethos is loosely translated, means moral character. It's like the kind of person you are or what you're like and what you bring to the table when you're persuading the audience to listen to you. You're showing the audience a couple of things. First of all, that you know what you're talking about, that you're not just pulling this out of thin air, and that you really understand this and have knowledge to go along with that understanding. That you're there to meet the audience's needs. It's not just some canned presentation you've thrown together, but you really are trying to take into account of why the audience has gathered there together and then meet those needs. And third reason, show the audience you have something in common with them. So let me go into more detail on each of these with the next slide. All right, so here's ethos. There's three things that go into ethos, and I've touched on them already, but we'll go into more detail here. Good sense, goodwill, and good morals. Let's start with good sense. Again, this is the knowledge part, that you know your stuff. You know what you're talking about. If you are loose with the facts and you show you don't really understand something, or for say one time I had a student who gave a speech on Mardi Gras, but it came clear during the presentation that she didn't know when Mardi Gras was, like not even close, not even the time of year it was. She didn't know anything about the parades. She lost a lot of credibility with the good sense part because she just didn't really seem what she knew what she was talking about. So again, pick something you know about, pick something you have a little bit of experience on, and then you'll be able to know what you're talking about and not have any problem with the good sense. Goodwill shows that you care about your audience. You're not there trying to manipulate them or trick them into doing something that's not good for them, but that you also understand why they're there and you're trying to meet those needs. Your audience will always have something in common. They may be from different genders, ethnic backgrounds, races, religions, all of those different things, but they have all come together in that room to listen to that presentation for one reason, or for some reason. It may be multiple reasons. Say they're all there to listen to a campaign speech. They're probably voters. That's something they have in common. They're probably citizens. They're probably, lots of time, they're probably there with the same party. They're all Democrats or Republicans or independents, and they're interested in hearing that person's viewpoint. In this class, all of you are Galveston College students, something you all have in common. Even if you're not a full-time student, you're at least taking one class here, so that's something you have in common. So you'll take that need and you'll modify your speech to meet the needs of the audience. And that'll show them that you care about them, that you're paying attention to who they are and why they're there. Good morals is the last one. And this shows that you have something in common with your audience. We all like people who are like us. The more we feel like we have in common with somebody, the more trustworthy we see them as, the more believable we see them as, the more likely we're willing to listen to them. So as a speaker, you need to try to figure out what you have in common with the audience, and then emphasize that as well as you can. Show the audience that you're like them and that you have something in common with them. And the most common way this is done is we talk about what are the audience's attitudes, beliefs, and values on the subject. Showing that you share values or that you have similar attitudes or beliefs that they do is one way of demonstrating good morals. So, okay, how do you put this into application in your speech? Good sense, a couple of things about good sense. Showing the audience that you have knowledge, you know what you're talking about, you have experience with this. Go ahead and throw it out there at the beginning of the speech. Make statements like, I've been skateboarding now for 5 years, or I've spent a lot of time researching this particular topic and I'd like to share with you the things I've learned in that research. Here's the one exception where sometimes you're giving a speech on something you don't necessarily have a lot of experience. Say I want to do a speech about diabetes. I don't have diabetes. I hope I don't have diabetes ever, but maybe I have a relative who has diabetes. My grandmother has it or my mother-in-law has it. And I can use that in my good sense. I can say, today I'm going to talk to y'all about diabetes. This is a disease that affects however many millions of Americans it affects. And one of those Americans is my mother. And in preparing this speech, I've done a lot of research on it so that hopefully I can help her improve her lifestyle and not have this disease ravage her life any worse than it already has. Something like that. So you would talk about the little bit of experience you do have with it, and then demonstrate to the audience that you've done research to back up that knowledge that you do have. So that's a ways you can do good sense. I'll give more examples later. Goodwill, this is where you show the audience that you care, and again, the main way you're doing that is just making it clear that this is not just a generic speech, that you know who your audience is, you know why they're there, and you're adapting that topic to the audience. Last one, good morals, showing your audience that you share attitudes, beliefs, and values. And again, you'll emphasize common bonds. Talk about some of those beliefs or attitudes that you have in common and show them that you are like them, that you have similar ideas that they have, and that will help you be more believable and credible in that person's eyes. Let me give you some specific examples of all of these things, how you might actually incorporate them into your speech. Good sense, again, that's usually towards the beginning of your speech, and you might make statements like these. I've been skateboarding for 5 years now, or the research I've done preparing for this project will demonstrate the importance of this issue. So you're talking about the research you've done or talking about how much experience you have in that particular topic. Next one, goodwill, you're showing the audience that you've modified or adapted this for them, that you care about them. And statements like, my presentation will give you the information you need to know to finish the job right. In other words, I'm going to help you get through this. Or these instructions are complex, but stick with me and I'll answer all your questions thoroughly. I'm here to help you. I'm here to get you through this. So that shows that you care. Good morals, that you share attitudes, beliefs, or values is the last one. We all understand the importance of spreading our message, but many of us are still hesitant to speak up. So, we're all on the same page, or we all have this little fear about talking about this. I'm showing that I understand that. Or don't you hate it when people talk so loudly on their cell phones in public? We all hate this. We all can't stand this. We've got this in common. So those are just sample statements. Again, good sense, those types of statements you're going to put at the beginning of your speech. Goodwill and good morals, that'll be sprinkled throughout the body of your speech. So in conclusion, it's important to establish your ethos in a speech, to show the audience that you know what you're talking about and that you care about them and that you have things in common with them. So throughout your speech, show them you know what you're talking about, show them that you're there to meet your needs, and show them the things that you have in common. Hope this has helped you understand ethos a little better, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.